I'm sure you are going to enjoy it. Put your city and state in the chat so we are able to recognize all of you. Happy Monday to everybody. And Shaun, you are on mute right now, my dear.
Hi, Shaun.
Yes, indeed. Hello. How are y'all?
Good.
Oh, you know what? I have my headphones in. All right. Hello. I was like, why can't I hear anybody? Okay, Tawana, say something for me.
Something for me.
Okay, perfect. And I can hear you. Yes, yes. Hello. All righty then. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. Just getting myself together here. Y'all know how I have to do it. Yes, hello. All righty then. Did everyone have a good weekend?
Yes.
Good, good. So we've got Tampa Bay in the house. We have Atlanta, Austell, Georgia, Brooklyn, New York, Chicago, Memphis, Bridgeport, Stockton, California. Happy Monday from Wharton, New Jersey, Bronx. Happy Monday, Monique from Queens, Dallas in the house, Jonesboro, Georgia. Seattle, Washington is here. Yes, people are saying they had a great weekend. So fantastic. We have a super interesting, unique session for today with our friend here, Shaun Glaze. So tonight's topic is super exciting. I want to get a little audience participation here, if I may. Hello, Sally from California. We got New Jersey in the house. Hello, hello. New York showing out tonight. Yes, y'all are. New York. All right. Put a 1 in the chat if you consider yourself any kind of a community leader, a leader in your community. It doesn't have to be an official public office, but put a 1 in the chat if you are somebody who's very involved in your local community. Put a 2 in the chat if you're very involved in your church or sorority, fraternity, some sort of an organization. Put a 3 in the chat if you are a business owner. Thanks, Sally. She says, love my hair. Put a 3 in the chat if you are a business owner and you want to potentially get grants for your business. The reason, and put a 4 in the chat if you're a lurker. Y'all know I love my lurkers. Like, I am a professional lurker. I will go and listen to stuff that I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever use this, but it's some interesting stuff to know. So if you're a lurker, you see, we've got a lurker.
Lauren said he's a lurker.
We got lurkers here. Professional lurkers, yes.
That's funny.
So when I initially spoke to Shaun, and then we spoke again a couple of additional times, she started talking with us about the range of people that she has helped. And it's now over $6 million within 6 months that she has helped her clients get within grants. So this is not somebody who's saying, I think you could do something like this. This is a woman who actually knows how to put strategy together and things like that. So everybody put an exclamation point in here if you are ready to hear from Shaun Glaze. Let's see those exclamation points, everybody. All righty then. Hi, Shaun.
I love it. I should definitely I'll be using some of these techniques in the future. Hi, how are you?
We're doing well, thank you. So I'm excited for tonight. So is Tawana and everybody else who is here to talk about grants. So that's money we don't have to pay back, which we love.
Yes.
So why don't you first of all tell us a little bit about yourself and how you not only became a grant writer, but a grant strategist. What's your backstory?
Sure. Hi, y'all. I'm also joining from Seattle, Washington. I saw Seattle in the chat. Represent. I'm Shaun Glaze. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Chief Consulting Officer for Inclusive Data. Inclusive Data is my company. But when people get to know me, they usually like to hear things like, hey, I'm from Texas. So I will say y'all a lot. I have a 7-year-old who will probably appear in the screen despite my best attempts otherwise, and a dog that'll probably bark her head off. So shout out to all you dog owners that can relate. Yes, and I'm a researcher. I'm a researcher by trade, by passion, by joy. I absolutely love research, and that's how I came into this work. I specialize in collaborative research towards policy change. That's something that is what I geek out about. I love taking curious, passionate people, getting them together, asking good questions, and then changing the material conditions of Black folks' lives. That's my favorite. And this work, I've been doing grant-related work for a little over 10 years now. I started out like a lot of grant writers do, where someone kind of throws something at you and they're like, hey, you know how to write. But I also apprenticed underneath people who were really skilled at getting millions of dollars. So I learned a lot of the things to do at the beginning and saved a lot of heartache, which was really great. What I've discovered is it really is part art, part science. It's more heavy on the science part than people might expect. And so when it was time for me to think about how I would pull this into my work, and especially in the last year, especially with a laser focus towards supporting and amplifying the work of Black communities, I thought a lot about how, man, we really aren't taught this stuff. Like, I don't know about y'all, but when I went to school, they weren't like, here's how to get resources for your community. That wasn't it, right? Like, we were taught to, I don't know, listen, don't ask too many questions, ask the right questions we're looking for, but don't ask those questions. Those are hard, and I think grant writing is kind of, I don't know, it's really fun in a way that is very like sciencey, but it's also fun in a relational way. When we write irresistible grant proposals, it's because we are connecting with that funder on like a relational level. We're not just, coming up with great ideas. They read our proposals and they're like, yeah, I will find money to fund this. So for those of you who are thinking about, whether or not grants could be part of your business or your nonprofit, or even just for your individual needs, I really want to encourage you to keep a couple of things in mind. One is there's plenty of money out there. Like, I don't know if y'all saw, but even though many of us in our communities did not benefit from the pandemic, a lot of the wealthy people did. And a lot of the wealthy people are still holding that wealth. Some of them have like multiplied their wealth times 10. And they are also feeling real guilty because they're like, oh, like, if I don't know if you noticed, but our community is really getting harmed. And so we know this, but for them, it's the first time that they've really had to contend with it publicly. So you're seeing a lot more grants go out, a lot more focus on Black community, on Black leadership, on Black solutions. And the thing is, they don't know how to reach us. Right? Like they literally have never figured that out. And so many of them are using the same strategies, these funders, that they've always used, and they're expecting different results, and that just isn't going to happen. So what I like to teach people is all of the different skills to be able to find these opportunities, all the skills to create opportunities for ourselves, and then also, how do you get grants without having to write them? Like, sure, you can hire someone like me and I can write your grants for you. That's great. Not going to turn that down necessarily, but there's only so many of us out there. And I would much rather people have the skills to be able to support themselves and their community than for there to be a reliance on just a few of us having this skill set. So that's a little bit about me.
Somebody, Shaun may train you, and you may be able to hang up your shingle. Y'all
Hey.
know I am always talking about if you've got a full-time job and you want to, have a little side hustle, some of the ideas that you can have, this could potentially be one of them. So,
Yes.
I'm going to push Shaun out there and say Shaun may train you.
Hey, I will. We just launched Grant Slayer Academy. That's our new course. So we really go through literally all the things, everything from how do you find grants? Now, a lot of people, they think, I'm just going to Google. Like, oh, yeah, I should probably drop the link in the chat. Yes, writing grants is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. But like a lot of people think you can use Google. I love Google. There's some really good tips and tricks that I give people for how to like find the Google things, but 90% of foundations don't have a website. So you're not going to find them on Google. And then the other types of grants, the ones through the government, they're usually posted, but like they're written in a way where when you read it, you don't necessarily think, this is for me, right? Because they don't know how to write for us. And so it takes a little bit of like work to kind of decipher and read between the lines. And it's something that we teach people how to do all the time. It's like, oh, when they say they are really focused on economic development and they're prioritizing like HUD zones or something, it's like, they're trying to find us, but they don't know how to say that. They think we talk in terms of HUD zones. Like literally that's the level we're working with. So, but yeah, I would love to hear more what y'all would like to share in this next part of our conversation.
Yeah, people are like, I'm interested in learning. So you already have people who are interested. So all righty then. So I know Tawana's got a ton of questions for you too. I'll start off with just asking, what types of grants are available? Like who is this for?
Mhm.
And who is this not for? Like if you fit into these categories, this is really not the thing for you. But these categories, especially things that people may not have thought of that would be eligible for grants. I know you probably could go 10 minutes talking about this, but I'd love for you to, I'd love for you to just kind of give us some highlights on both sides of the aisle here.
Sure. So I can start with who it's for, then who it's not for, because that's the order you asked it. So who it's for. This is usually for someone who has a little bit of time, not a lot of time, maybe like 30 minutes or so a week, maybe an hour, to really devote to learning a new skill. Now, we break the new skill down into several different parts. It's not like you're suddenly expected to master all the things. We include templates. We have weekly office hours. You can come in kind of like this and just ask questions and get answers and meet other grant writers who can also support. So we're really big on support. It's also for someone, aside from having the time, it's also for someone who is interested in applying for grants that require, I want to say, skill. So some grant opportunities that y'all will find if you Google, say you're Googling like Black women grants or something like that, or grants for Black people, you'll see these, what they call grants that are out there that are actually lotteries. And so you put in your information and then they're going to randomly pull winners. I usually recommend people to not spend more than 5 hours a month total applying for those if they're going to apply for them at all. Because honestly, like it doesn't matter how well you write, they're just going to pick a random number. So you're going to want to present something that's accurate, but you're not going to want to spend a lot of time on it. I like to really think about the grants that are between 10,000 and 300,000 as being like a pretty good ballpark. And those grants almost always require some amount of skill. So if you're interested in skill and strategy, definitely that. And then the third group of people that I think a lot about are those really like busy business owners who are usually staying up late at night because you're anxious about your business doing well because you're in a pandemic and everything is so stressful. And you just need like that, you need something that gives you both a sense of accomplishment and will actually help you get resources for your business. So you're not like doom scrolling Instagram. So I would definitely say that's really who we try to design this for, which is why they're really short, lots of templates, lots of support. It's not for someone who's hoping that they can get a grant in the next 6 weeks, because honestly, it's going to take you a while to learn how to do it. We're happy to look over your grant proposals as part of office hours. We can make edits, like you can get lots of help, but I want to set realistic expectations. You're not going to be able to get a grant within the next 6 weeks by taking this class. I also would say it's not for someone who is, let's see, what's the best way to describe this? I'm just gonna say how it is, like not willing to put in the work. Like if you think you can just like be in a class and like somehow through osmosis get this skill, you won't do it. I will say though, I think you would have a much better chance of being able to kind of coast along if you have a study buddy. So if you want to take this class and have a study buddy and your study buddy and you can hold each other accountable, then great. Absolutely.
So Eric and I had the same question. Are grants for-profit companies? I always thought they were for just nonprofit, but for-profits can benefit from grants as well.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the most common misconceptions. So especially for our community, we're like, we've heard of grants and it's like scholarship, right? Like going to college, or it's for nonprofits. A couple of things that y'all might not know. One is that nonprofits can partner with for-profit businesses to do programming. Now, there's some rules. It's not like anything goes, but chances are that if you're a for-profit business and just about anything, there's a way that you can create a opportunity to help a nonprofit advance their mission. So that's one way that we're able to help people think about strategy is just like, okay, you have this for-profit business. Maybe you're a clothing business, right? And you sell women's clothes and you have like a mix of like professional clothes and like club clothes, and maybe, say that's you. Chances are that there are some nonprofits in your area that focus on women's empowerment, that focus on workforce development, that focus on making sure that maybe it's a younger set, young people have what they need to be able to survive and thrive and feel confident, right? Like chances are that exists. Mm-hmm. And so like really thinking through who are the local partners in the area and like what grants can I, as a for-profit business, find that this nonprofit might be interested in? How do I approach and talk to them about this? And maybe I can source their clothes for this program that they're running. And then they can write in their grant that they're going to pay someone for these clothes. And hey, I sell, right? So really thinking about like, how do you create these opportunities where, and I focus nearly exclusively on Black nonprofits and Black businesses so we can circulate our dollars. But how do you find partners where you can approach them and create a mutually beneficial relationship? Because we want our relationships to last longer than any funding cycle. And so like you want to be someone who's not just adding value in like the business sense, but is like really creating and fostering opportunities within our community. So that's one of the things I teach people and who are for-profit businesses and are newer to this. And the second thing is, I'm going to tell this to y'all right now, we're in mid-May. There's something that's called ARPA funds, right? Y'all may have heard of that. It's all about it's another round of stimulus, but it's not for individuals, it's for governments. And so the federal government is giving this money to the states, who gives it to the cities, and it kind of trickles down, which means that there will be a new round of grants nationwide to be able to address the harms that are caused by the pandemic. This is different from the SBA, PPP, all of that. This is stuff like childcare and internet and a variety of other things, economic development, especially for small businesses, especially for small minority businesses, right? And so each of these different cities and counties in the area and United States is investing in our communities, but the rules about how are being written right now. Last week and this week and a little bit of next week is when we're going to see a lot of these rules being written. And so one of the things we teach people is how to appear during these opportunities to help guide what the criteria are going to look like, so that when the grant comes out, you are in position, our community's in position to actually benefit from these investments, which matters because our communities really need it. And the people who make these decisions don't usually know how to reach us.
Oh, Shaun, I was going to let you keep going. Well,
I was going to read some of the questions. Yeah, you want to read some of the questions.
Okay, well, I guess let me ask another question then. You had mentioned that for-profit companies can connect with nonprofits in order to pursue a grant. How receptive are nonprofits to this? It's like if you talk to 10, will 8 say yes? Or, I mean, like, because sometimes people will suggest things and then you go and you try to implement it and it sounds like it's great common sense, but then you don't get calls back or anything like that. So I'm just very curious. Do you have to be more selective in the nonprofits that you're pursuing? Like, I just would love to know a little bit more about that.
And a little bit more about that. Yeah, so we provide templates and stuff to make this a little easier for people, because sometimes it's just like, you don't want to cold call somebody. And we encourage people not to have the first conversation be like, hey, you want to get some money? But rather kind of get a sense of like who might be a good partner, and here's some guidelines for questions to ask yourself and questions to ask them. That said, most nonprofits, most Black-led nonprofits are super busy and super under-resourced. They may not even have a grant writer, right? And so like they might not have a grant writer. They need grants. They know they need grants. They're interested in grants, but they don't know how to find these grants. And they don't have anyone who has capacity to write them. So if you approach a nonprofit that doesn't have a grant writer, then they might be like, wow, we really need some help with grant writing. Will you be willing to put in like some of your time, almost like sweat equity, honestly, to like help write or prepare so we can review? And we coach people in that all the time. And it's not particularly difficult when you have willing partners and when they're willing to at least review it before you submit it. So I would say more often than not, people will say yes, even if they shouldn't necessarily say yes. And so we help people think through the questions they should ask to determine if this is actually something that's worth pursuing. Because the last thing you want is to agree to something and then you find out it's not a good fit and you've wasted, hours of your life on this process that's like not going to work out. And then you have this weird relationship with this person. Like no one wants that. And so we really encourage people to be not just like intentional about the relationships they develop, but also just like that you have enough support so that you can say no as well.
Right. I will say, just again, most people know I'm a business plan writer by trade, and I stopped doing like free business plans. Oh, I'll pay you on the back end, because you would start these relationships with people and then they wouldn't get you the information you need. And like these grants will ask you for bios and they'll ask you for, because I did one like a few weeks ago for a nonprofit. They'll ask you for the financials, of that nonprofit and things like that. And if you have an unresponsive partner, then like Shaun is saying, you've wasted your time. So Tiffany, don't worry about being late, girl. You here on time? We're talking about grants and how Shaun's got $6 million worth of grants for her clients over the past 6 months, and she's given us some opportunities here. So Tawana, you want to go over some of the questions?
Yeah, I'm going to read a few that were in the chat first. Let me scroll back up.
I love seeing all the questions, y'all. As a researcher, my heart just gets really excited.
So Althea says, hello, Shaun. Are there any grants out there that will help me to fund my educational program that caters to the ability levels, preschool, school age, and kindergarten through 5th grade charter school?
Yes, absolutely. Of course. If you can tell me more about your location, then I might be able to give you some more specifics. But generally speaking, a lot of grants are geographically bound. So they'll be like, I'm trying to help this particular county or this particular city or this particular state. So if y'all have questions like this, if you can give me your area, then I can like take a
And Althea says she's in Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Thanks. Yeah, I'll do a quick little search while we're having this conversation. Educational programs are one of my favorite things because no one ever gets mad about education, like ever. And our community really values education. And so definitely want to put that out there. A couple of things to keep in mind. Right now, many of us are ending the school year. So that means we're going to see a lot of out of school time, after school, summer school, type programs kick off, new rounds of camps and other sorts of things like that, many of your local cities will have resources around that, especially coming up because of these ARPA funds. If you're writing for education, you're going to want to be thinking about keywords like your normal keywords, like talking about educational disparities, or talking about different ability levels is what I see there, or talking about how you're creating programs for to close achievement gaps, right? Like those kinds of things are almost always, there are funds for them. Something that you might not necessarily think about is how your age range of your kids might overlap with other funding sources. So K through 5th grade means up to about 10, which means that many of those children that you're trying to support through education grants could also be supported through childcare, early learning grants, which means that you have this other bucket of money that you might not even think about applying for. So there's that. Another thing to consider is that your another bucket of money that's really good is families. So our community knows that like to support a child, you have to support like the whole family. Like doesn't matter what part of the country you're in. Like anytime I talk to Black folks, we are always talking about how you need a holistic approach when you're supporting kids. What you may notice is that the grants that are for families aren't necessarily calling out K through 5th grade or education, but will have like a little carve out for education or for supports or things like that. So sometimes it's just knowing enough about a field and like what the keywords are, so that when you're searching for it, you can make the most use and you find the most opportunities. So I'm going to do a quick search for Columbus, Ohio, while we look up, or Ohio more broadly, while we look up for more questions. I will tell you, education is super near and dear to my heart. I have my master's is in family therapy and my PhD studies are in applied development ed psych. And so education is like one of my favorite things to look for. So many really good opportunities, as well as opportunities to partner with schools. Oh my goodness.
So Tanganyika is starting a little boys clothing line.
Okay.
Ultimately, I think Tanganyika, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be your son's business, right? You're building this business for him. Are there grants that she could get?
Tell me more about the clothing line. What kind of clothes?
Little boys clothes.
Little boys clothes. Oh, oh my goodness. So for a little boys clothing line, it's sort of your normal approaches of thinking about who all works with little kids. So again, like if they're really tiny, I'm thinking like childcare connections. I'm thinking about early intervention. I'm thinking about like, what are all the different audiences that the government cares about? And then I'm thinking about the connections with nonprofits. And then I'm thinking about what kind of business and location, because there's some grants that aren't about what you're selling, but rather the quality of your, like the characteristics of your business. So you might see grants that are just for small business owner with like 8 or fewer employees and, this county. And so you'll want to look at those. What's tough is you'll be competing with people who are in like very different fields. So I like to focus on thinking about what's a compelling program that you can, or story that you can tell. And then like, who are the foundations who might be interested in that story? So right now, let me think. We don't have a little kids clothing line, but I've helped people who design clothes for like the middle-aged kids who are like late elementary, middle-aged kids, y'all. You heard it first. And so with them, we were thinking a lot about what kinds of partnerships would help them get more clients as well. So for them, they decided to host like pop-up shop events and court the local like charter schools and like other, like have this like event and then get more customers. And then through that talk, you know, whether or not they want to partner for a grant in the future. And I thought that was a really great approach to think about partnering with people who have your target audience, who will be buying your stuff. And then just kind of spitball ideas and see what people get really excited about. For them, it was the mentorship is something that came up a lot. It was like, we need a mentoring program. So for little kids, I don't think about mentorship usually. I think about like more education, childcare, camps, definitely, and things where people spend a lot of their time. And also I'm looking at right now, just to give y'all a heads up, I am in Ohio right now, and I'm trying to number it down a little bit because there's so many opportunities. If I want to show you my
That's
screen
good
in a
news out
moment.
there. So many opportunities. That's
Oh
great
man,
news.
Ohio's got a lot going on. I'm not really, that's pretty remarkable. I'll say, remind me how old those kids were. It was like K-5, right?
Yeah, it was
Okay.
K through, let me go back to our note.
We'll just do children then. We won't do youth. Awesome. Search. Okay.
Yes,
so
K through 5. Preschool to in school age, K through 5. And she
preschool's my
specifically
favorite.
said charter school.
Charter school, great. So I just did a quick search. This isn't like as in-depth as I would do for like a client, but I'm looking at grants that are focused on helping children in Ohio within the last year. There are 94 different grants. There are several that are open right now. Some of them are through the, I don't know how to pronounce it, Akron Community Foundation. They have 9 grants out right now. And then some of them are with a couple of other foundations that are outside of Ohio, which is really common. You'll see these foundations, like right now, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, they're in Princeton, New Jersey. They have 3 open grants right now, and they have funded in Ohio before. So you'll start to see these patterns of these foundations who will have sort of like special relationships with a particular location. And so that's helpful because you're going to want to predict too when like the next opportunity is going to come up. So you look at trends over time, like in the last year or the last 2 years, what have these foundations invested in? So I'm looking at the Akron one. They're really focused on philanthropy that's focused on addressing evolving needs. There's special emphasis on programs that enrich community, especially in education, and also developing community leadership. So I think something like this, where it's like there are multiple different funds that are open for a particular foundation, I look at that. I look at when their boards meet. So we're in May. Their board meets in May. It meets in February, May, August, and November, which means that I would expect that we might see even more funding after May because their board's going to meet and decide how to adjust their priorities and their investments. So that's fun. And to do that search, I have access to these special databases that includes all the foundations, not just in the US, but also other places around the world, which again is helpful because a lot of foundations, most foundations don't have websites. But what sucks about that is it means that only those people who like pay for the ability to access these databases knows about these opportunities. But I'll give you a little tip since we're all here. If you check out your local public library, you could probably access these same databases. In Seattle, you get free access to what's called Foundation Directory Online, which is the best database for doing this. And you get that for free with your library card. And if your library doesn't have this, you can ask for it and they can probably, if there's enough demand, especially figure out how to share or get their own license. So definitely check that out.
That was good information.
And a lot of times you don't have to go into the library. If you have your library card, you're able to log in to the library system. So
yes.
Shout out to the library cards.
Library. And it changes. I will tell you, Seattle, like during the pandemic, we're just now about to come out of the restrictions, but The FDO, there's 2 levels of the FDO database, that's Foundation Directory Online. There's Essential, where you can like see the funders, but you can't see the grants. And then there's Professional, where you can see it all. And they still were going to require people to come in person during COVID for the professional version. But like there was enough interest to where they're like, oh, well, we'll just run queries for you. So don't get discouraged if like they tell you have to go in. If you let them know that like that's not feasible for you, ask them if they can do the queries for you. It's still a lot of like work to think about like what to have them search for, but it's super worth it when it comes to being able to access these opportunities.
So Saga says, public grants are very political. My organization is definitely interested in private grants for community empowerment and building capacity, for example, the entrepreneurial, etc. So is that true? Public grants are political, whereas private grants are maybe easier to obtain?
Man, I can tell you, and I don't know to what extent this answers your question, but I find public grants to be fascinating, because if you can influence what that RFP looks like before it goes out, then that's amazing. So I think it's political in the sense that there's a lot of voices that could influence the RFP process. And RFP is request for proposals. It's just them like asking you to send them your idea in a particular format. And so like in what I encourage people to do is really watch like what the investments look like for like your city or your county, wherever you're located. And as soon as there's like new like federal money coming in that's going to be reallocated, you should be asking like who's going to be in charge of like delivering like that to community. Chances are it's going to be some like group of like government workers who would be super thrilled to have community voice share like what this will look like, but again, like don't have the time, interest, or know-how to reach us. So like it's really well received. So to that extent, I do think it's political, and that there are choices that are made, and it's like there's some politics to it, but I actually find it incredibly way easier in some sense, because you can influence what the RFP looks like. Even if you come in after the RFP, you can ask questions, and they can like, they're sort of required to answer your questions in a way that's very different than private foundations. They have to put the RFP out there on a website somewhere, unlike foundations, which don't. And so like there's a certain amount of openness, yeah, which is kind of nice. Which is not to say it's a perfect process, because I don't know how many of y'all knew that you can influence an RFP before today. Right. And so like the people who know.
Well, you know, one of the things, and Tawana knows my famous saying, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And my suggestion is, I'm going to take it one step further than what Shaun said. Get to know the players before the RFP comes through. That way, they contact you and say, something is about to come on our desk. It's not even published yet, but we'd like to get your thoughts on it, you know?
Do that.
And play both sides, Republican and Democrat. I know my people, you know, we tend to be Democrats, but don't be afraid to walk over to the conservative side. You don't have to sell out.
When you're trying to get grants, I don't think any of that should matter at all.
It shouldn't matter. And in fact, you might do better sometimes on the other side as well, because you're the only one in the room and they're like, well, what are you doing here? Well, you know, I am just trying to help my community as best I can.
I can.
And you don't have to, I'm going to say sell out just because I don't have a better word for it. You don't have to sell out for that. You know, you can be very honest about what your positions are, yet you can still play the game. And we, Steve laced them up with game. Yes, Kevin.
So Vivian said, Shaun, can you explain the difference between grants and an RFP?
Oh my gosh, they're pretty interchangeable, honestly. When people, I usually say grants because to me it's broader. There are some grants that you can get without writing responding to an RFP. An RFP is usually, tell me your ideas, this will be great. But like, I feel people get grants just by like them talking to a funder, and then the funder's like, oh, we have money, just give you money for, for that. So grants to me is more broad. RFP is usually formal. Typically, there's sort of a couple of key things many of them will ask. Normal things like, who are you? What are you doing? What's your mission and what's your vision? Those are things that you can expect to be asked also in a business plan context or a promotion context. And most people are prepared to kind of speak to that to some extent. I really encourage people to always be ready to have like a couple of key things when you're responding to an RFP. So that's like your mission, your vision. That's your bio for like every single staff member that you might want to put on a grant. That's one thing a lot of people don't devote enough time to. And then there's that last minute scramble where you forget this, that, or the other thing, and then you don't get the opportunity. An RFP will also usually be, well, depending on the source, they're usually fairly short. So I would say that it's not uncommon to have 5 pages to describe not just who you are and your idea, but like how you'll measure your impact. What does success look like? And like, what's that transformation that people have on the other side of working with you? So those key things, I think, are typically part of an RFP. Sometimes they're more detailed, just like, tell me exactly how many staff members you have and how many hours that you're going to have them. You're like, I have 1 person or I have 20 people. And it kind of varies week by week. So just being able to speak to that is pretty common for an RFP. I see lots of things in the comments. I'm trying to see.
So there's 3 questions that I'm kind of going to combine.
Okay.
So Anderson says, can grants be used to buy homes to flip? But then Tuesday takes a little further and says, I'd love some information about grants to purchase real estate investment properties. Are there grants out there for that? She's in California, or he's in California. I apologize, Tuesday. I do love that name, by the way. And then Monica even takes it a step further and says that she wants to turn a property into a domestic violence shelter. So like, how does real estate play a part with grants?
Yeah, and one more, Danita on Facebook is asking about grants for assisted living. So let's take that as well.
Yes, so grants and real estate can go together hand in hand. Now, me personally, I have never, ever written or tried to write a grant for investment property, so I'm not going to be the expert there. But I have written for grants where you get things like mortgages, rent, land acquisition, renting spaces, commercial spaces, things like mixed use, that kind of thing. And that's a lot easier.
Girl, we're going to have to get that grant. the land one. Yes, we're gonna have to talk with you about that one.
Yes. And when you just said mortgage pay too, I just talked to a gentleman who's part of this community, and he's trying to come up with a way to take care of the homelessness issue and get homes for people. I mean, something like being able to get a mortgage or get mortgages paid, like that's a program that could definitely something that could help with his program.
Right, absolutely. So the easier ones are ones that have an obvious like public benefit. So homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters, that kind of thing. That's a lot easier because there's multiple different funding sources that are targeting that. For the real estate, that's really hard for investment properties because typically speaking, people aren't interested in funding people's investments in that way. What I do talk to people about is, are there other things that would free up money for you to be able to do that kind of investment? So that's usually where I go. I'm like, okay, you have a business and you have how much of business expenses can we free up for you so that you have money to do those investments? And that's what's nice about that is if you are to find a grant that does real estate investment properties, it's not typically going to be like a multi-year thing. Like best case scenario, you could do something like maybe you're creating like a community land trust, right? Or you're creating a thing that is new so that you can have community owned land. Like I think that would be something you can find a couple of grants for. But typically speaking, you're not going to see a grant that's like, please flip houses, apply here, unfortunately. But if we can free up some of your business or personal expenses in some way, things you're paying out of pocket that you shouldn't be paying out of pocket, then you'd be surprised like how, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised how easy it would be to find that investment money to do what you want to do. And there's another question that was related to this, which was, oh, nursing homes or assisted living facilities, same thing. So I would put that in the same bucket as the domestic violence shelter and the homelessness shelter. Things like that are a little easier to get funding for. Out of that group, I would really encourage y'all, like if you do have an idea that has some type of public good or public benefit, to find out like where are the resources and funding going for that. There's definitely other people who are working on it. You're not going to be the first one that had the idea. And typically like people aren't super duper competitive if they know that what you're trying to do is going to help them too. So don't feel, afraid to find the groups that meet locally and who are setting the strategic plan for, domestic violence or homelessness shelter or assisted living facilities, because they exist, and attend some of their meetings and start developing those relationships. And you'll also learn more about what the unique pain points are in your area. Because in some areas, the issue is that there's not enough land. In other areas, there's land, but there's not enough service providers. So just like knowing what the pain points are, so you know what you need to be funding for is really important.
Very good. Taryn says, how about a startup grant for transportation business transporting kids ages 5 to 17 in Kalamazoo, Michigan?
I've written 6 grants this year that have transportation, everything from school buses, shuttle buses, like vans, medical vans, refrigerated trucks, 18-wheeler truck things. So yeah, I would say the biggest things that you're going to run into there are the sort of capital hard costs, the cost of the equipment, and then insurance. And those are both things that you can put on a grant application pretty easily. I'd be curious to know more about the specific program and like who you're serving and, like why you're providing this transportation. Is it to and from school? Is it to medical appointments? If I were to work with you, just to get a sense of like what's the sort of story that we would be telling. But I will say those are all things that you could get covered by grants. And so figuring out your story will help figure out who are the funders that might make the most sense to approach with something like that.
So Shaun, let's go ahead and put in the chat again the site for your course, and then also your contact information.
Sure. So I will drop it in the chat. I'm going to copy it and paste it, and I'll also find an easier way to share this. Actually, there's a bit.ly too that I can share to the people who are not necessarily on words. Words. It is, let me just type it here, make sure that's right. Okay, so the name of my course is called Grant Slayer Academy. It's 6 weeks. We go through all of the things. We start small at the very beginning, about like how to just get ready and really get your paperwork in order so you can have things so that when you find something that is like coming up soon, you can already have most of it done. I've actually done that before where it's like I'll be looking, it's like, oh man, this grant's due tomorrow. I usually don't encourage people to apply for a grant that's due tomorrow. So this grant's due tomorrow. The application's only 20 minutes and it's all stuff I already have. Yes, I will apply for that. So you're unable to view the link. Okay, so I'm gonna say it out loud, I guess. And then the link is E, the letter, oh, why am I trying to sign it? The letter E, the letter Z, tree.me/inclusive data. So it's easytree.me/inclusive data. The letter E, the letter Z, tree.me/inclusive data. Easy Tree is like Linktree, y'all, but it's a Black woman-owned business. And so I like to support Black women-owned businesses.
You know, when I just opened it, because it opened for me, I thought to myself, oh, it looks like Linktree. Like,
It does.
Yeah, that's
It
funny you say
does.
that.
I love using it. I love supporting Black women-owned
Okay,
businesses. So
Cherie,
that's
we
what
need to
that's
get the
up.
Easy Tree lady on here. I love when there is a version by us. I love it. I love it.
Yes. And that first pink link is Grant Slayer Academy. And I would love to just hear people's feedback as they take it. So far, people have been really excited to use it and to learn, and mostly just to be able to spend time with us in office hours, because we're just normal people, and able to just answer some pretty hard questions. Some of the questions that I see here in the chat, for example, come up a lot, which is just kind of thinking about like the different certifications you might have or different entity structure things. And that's way easier to just kind of talk out versus, try to figure out and read and all of that. So really excited. I know we don't have a lot of time. I do see a couple of questions I can answer quickly.
Okay.
Are there grant opportunities for nonprofit organizations or fiscally sponsored projects that work to support artists? Yes. I will say with like great conviction that support for artists is something that time and time again has been overlooked, but in the last year has really blossomed. And so definitely want to encourage y'all to, if you're an artist, you should be, and you want to look for grants, you should be looking up keywords like creative funds, like support artists. You'll also be looking, depending on the kind of art you make, whether or not you want to go after public art money, because many cities are, hiring artists to make art for public spaces. Some of those will be more like contracts, and some of them will be like grants where you'll write for your personnel costs. So like a salary, you'll write for your supply costs. So the things that you need to create the art that you have. Definitely encourage y'all to check that out. I really got into helping artists last year because a third of the groups that we were working with were all artists. And they're like, man, there's nothing out here. And so they're creating themselves programs, which is another way to get funding, is if you're like, there's not enough work not enough support for our artist community, and you connect in with, again, like government or foundations will actually fund this a lot too right now, especially Black-led art, Black created art. You'll see that there's actually a very strong market for investing there, but it's not well advertised. And then there are some foundations that have always had an art mission, and they're just overwhelmed with applications right now. And so unless you are creating something that's like really high impact or very collaborative, it might be hard to stand out among like the deluge of artists who are applying to these well-known foundations. Let's see.
So I have actually one from Tiffany in YouTube. Do you have any resources for her to learn how to start a nonprofit step by step?
Oh my gosh, that's one of the most common questions we get for people who are like really passionate. One of the teams that we helped, they haven't gotten their 501c3 yet. It takes about a year. So a couple of things I tell people is you can get a nonprofit status quickly if you go like this route, like this easy form, but you're limited by how much money you can raise in a short amount of time. So I don't recommend it if you're going to be like trying to bring in a lot of money. So like, because you don't want to get penalized. But yeah, I would say the best resources for this, and Tiffany, I don't know where you're at. Chances are there are local resources in your area for people who will for free help you through every single step of the 501 process. When I'm working with people, I'm always trying to find free resources for them that's based on community, because sometimes those same resources will connect you to funders and will connect you to other opportunities. So I'm always trying to get people to think local. One group that I like, though, that's in Washington State that also has resources more broadly, is called 501 Commons. That's the number 5, 0, 1 Commons. And they help with all kinds of nonprofit structuring questions. They'll do free referrals. They'll connect you with lawyer types, all the things you might need. So I definitely encourage you to really find someone that's close to you. And that's their main expertise, because otherwise you're likely to get some generic advice which doesn't necessarily help you when you're trying to create something specific. Cloud startups, coupon code, grants. Okay, so grant opportunities for web development and cloud startups, yes. Depending on what kind of setup that you have. So most grants will allow you to cover some type of personnel costs, salary costs, what have you. So if you are a one-person shop and you do just about everything, which is most like small business owners, chances are you're your own like web development, tech support, and everything else. So when you write grants that include web development or things like that in it, you can include part of your salary as part of the cost of delivering that. The second thing is many of them will also allow you to pay for contractors. And so if you're contracting this out, you're working with a vendor to do the web development, then that's really great. A new thing that we're doing, there's two groups here that are working on, is they're creating a jobs program where like they have someone who's going to be doing their web stuff, but then they pair like young people and a couple of like young adults as well, so like teens and young adults, to kind of like watch or shadow this person. And so they create like this like opportunity where once the person's done setting things up, they have people locally who can like help out, and then they can brag about those skills on their resumes, and they can they write into grants ways to pay those folks. So depending on what your strategy is, like if you're trying to build capacity internally, you can, what I'm saying is you can pay for part of your salary as being the person that's helping to manage the web development, pay for that vendor who's setting it up, have them basically like train or you know, show skills to people in your community, and then be able to increase your community's capacity to do that technical kind of work. And so depending on your strategy, you can find several ways to fund the work and also to carry it forward after the funding is over.
So I'm going to give the link one time, and then I'm also going to show you guys how to save the chat if you can't get to, if you're watching, but maybe you can't get to the chat to see the link. If you go down in the messages, where you type your message, there are 3 little dots at the top right-hand corner, and you right-click that, and it says Save Chat, and it'll save it on your one of your folders. But the website is easytree.me, and then is that a forward? Yeah, that's a /. I always forget forward or back. There's a / inclusive data, and that's how you can get to Shaun. It's the first pink link at the top of that list that you'll see once you access that. This has been great information. It really has been. You know, Shaun, thank you so very much. You will not be a stranger to us, to Cherie and I for sure, but definitely to the 10K community. As we can see from all of the engagement, there's definitely a need for this. And we love that you have the skill set to get us to that next stage in all of our journeys. So I imagine you're going to get a lot of emails here.
Bring it on. Love to see it. Thanks, y'all. Thank you so much for not just hosting me, but also so carefully curating the questions and the comments. I think that really the magic is always relationships. And there's something like very beautiful when we can create a space where people can ask questions and seek support and share what they know. So just kudos to y'all for being able to put this on so thoughtfully, and thanks so much for inviting me into the space.
Well, thank
Absolutely.
you. And,
thank you.
And this community loves you. We love you. You know, that's why we're here. We're here to educate and to bring people to educate the community in areas where we can't. And so, you know, to the community members, you know, please utilize Shaun if you're looking for this information. If you're interested in the course, you know, utilize her. You know, that's what 10K stands for, right? That ecosystem, that buying Black, investing Black, do all the things Black, right? And so, you know, she's coming to us with amazing knowledge. I mean, heck, she just gave some stuff for free. And that tip about the library, I don't know if that was over your head, but I know it wasn't over mine. That was a good tip. So So please
And
go to
there's
your
plenty
library
more
and
where
get the
that comes
foundation
from.
That's
directory.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, there's plenty more where that comes from. And, I get so many people asking me, do you write grants? And I'm like, very sporadically, even
Yes.
though just because it's a natural question, like
Mhm.
people will ask me that. So there are a lot of people, again, if you're looking for, call it a side hustle. I'm going to say freelance. If you
Uh-huh.
decide you want to hang up your shingle as a freelance grant writer, there is a lot of business out there for you. So,
Yes.
just consider that as well. All righty then. Well, thank you so much, Shaun, for being here. Thank you, Tawana, my partner in crime. Everybody, go check out the link, sign up for Shaun's email list, and ultimately her course, if that is what you decide you want to do. So,
And I have
thank
one
you.
more thing,
Oh,
Shirley.
yes.
While we're
Yes.
giving Shaun all the big ups, if you're not already a 10K member,
I know. I usually start with that. I was so excited
I
about the
know.
topic that I just
We
jumped
were so
right in.
excited about Shaun. If you are not already a 10K project member, please go to the 10kproject.com. If you want more content like you heard here tonight, this is just the beginning of it. There's a library of content like this. There'll
So
be
good.
a million more as long as you guys continue to support us. So please, if you're not already a member, consider joining us. If you are a member, join me tomorrow night at 8 p.m. for this week's Bet on Black Pitch. Got another
Mhm.
lady for y'all. Got another lady. And this industry is, I'll just say, I'm gonna tell you actually what it is. Vegan food. I was
Ooh.
gonna just say food, but I was like, no, give them a little bit more than that. Vegan food. So think
Vegan
about how
soul
big
food,
that
everybody.
industry.
Vegan
Oh,
soul
So
food.
think about
sold.
that industry.
Yes.
So that's tomorrow night's pitch, member only. So if you're not a member and you want to see that, go to 10kproject. The10kproject.com,
The10kproject.com. Yes.
the10kproject.com, and join us, and we'll get you the link and all the information. If you join tonight, you will make the cut and be able to attend tomorrow's pitch.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you tomorrow. Also, if you want to know how to invest in stock options, that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Bet on Black Pitch tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.